Hey everyone, I know I've been quiet lately, and part of the reason for that is because I've been working on several new videos lately. But before I get into any of that, I want to do a quick follow-up to my review of bats. Now, I've been getting a ton of comments lately that are basically along the lines of, "You're wrong about Fluttershy, Fluttershy's wrong and Applejack's right." So let me clarify something. In my review, I said it was a complex issue, and I also said that Applejack had a valid point about the bats being a problem. I wasn't necessarily trying to side with Fluttershy, or at least that wasn't my intention. I actually think they both made some good points, but then some really weird things started happening in the episode. For one thing, I felt like Applejack started losing some of her credibility as soon as she started waving a blanket around like it was Dracula's cape. I mean, she already said they were going to ruin her business. I think talking about how scary they are is a bit redundant, especially since she's only trying to convince Fluttershy, and Fluttershy already thinks they're cute. And speaking of Fluttershy, now I have heard other reviewers bring up a number of reasons why Fluttershy's plan was flawed, but I still think it's strange that she's the animal expert of the group and yet no one wanted to listen to her at all. There was no discussion, no explanation from her friends, she just got shut out. When you have a complex issue like this, it brings up the possibility for all kinds of great dialogue and interesting conversations, but that didn't happen here. Instead, it seems like the episode was more concerned with who was right and who was wrong, which I don't think was a good approach. So now you have this weird setup where the characters all side with Applejack, ignoring the fact that Fluttershy should at least have some authority on the subject. And even though I agree that Applejack should have been more level-headed after, this, the moral at the end tells us that Applejack was wrong because Fluttershy turned into a vampire. Oh, believe me, I'll get back to that in a second. Again, ignoring the fact that the bats are a legitimate threat to the orchard. And like I said in my review, the moral about telling your friends no is an important lesson that applies to real life, just not here and not with the way that they showed it. I actually think this would have been a lot more interesting if it had been about finding a compromise. Teach Applejack to respect the bats as living creatures, but also make Fluttershy realize that you can't just keep them on the farm and pretend they're not there. Remember, the farm already has fruit bats on it, but these vampire bats are not the same thing. Heck, if you want to make this really interesting, make Fluttershy come up with a plan to get rid of them. Oh, but then we might not have time to see Fluttershy turn into a vampire. And that was the real point of the episode, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm willing to bet the planning for this episode started with, let's turn Fluttershy into a vampire. Now, how do we make that happen? That whole debate about the vampire fruit bats was tacked on as an afterthought. Now, I also got a comment that said, if the what the fuckness gets a 4 out of 10, then what does that mean for the return of Harmony? Well, I don't consider myself to be the final authority on anything, but since I gave Return of Harmony a perfect 10, if you really think the random what the fuckness is the only reason Bats got a 4, then I'm sorry, but you kinda missed the point. In Return of Harmony, the randomness actually served a purpose. In addition to creating sight gags, it also served a theme, illustrating that chaos is the opposite of harmony, hence why the elements of harmony would see the god of chaos as their ultimate enemy. In Bats, Fluttershy turns into a vampire simply because vampire stories have been kind of popular lately. And since everything else was tacked on as a weak justification to get to that point, the whole episode ends up being a mess. Parts of it are still enjoyable, and I understand why people have fun with it, but that doesn't make it good. Anyway, I hope that clears up a few things. Like I said at the beginning, I'm working on a few other videos right now, including my review of Rarity Takes Manhattan. Surprise, I liked it a lot more than Bats. I'm also working on a gift review for a friend of mine, and I'm working on a review commission that's almost done. And speaking of which, I am still taking commissions. If you're interested, send me a private message or check out the details on my DeviantArt page and send me a note there. Also, I've got a new announcement that I'll go into more detail in a future update video, but I'm on Patreon now as well. I'm still kind of finding my way around there, but all the links are in the description below, so go check it out, send me feedback, and support me if you want to help me keep doing what I'm doing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.